Hi, I'm Jason Jaspersen. Welcome to my studio. I'm working on a music video for Koine, a Milwaukee Christian band, and it's based on the Apostles' Creed. And so the hymn, it's a Martin Luther hymn that moves through 3 verses that take us through the 3 persons of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And our idea is to also move through different eras of world history in our video. In Christian circles, a lot of times you hear kind of a fear or loathing for media. So a lot of times, we tend to blame movies, music, video games, social media as, they're rotting brains. And that's been around since Elvis and the Beatles, like that kind of rationale, that thinking. But I think the big question there, for a Christian is, well, what do you do about it? Do you go and hide and kind of like sequester yourself from that? I'd like to think that what we're doing is confronting the problem. So our concept is to do better, to step up and create content that does the job that we wish was being done. Koine has been a band, a very productive, creative Christian band for 15 years. So they have a large catalog of recorded songs, and they've been doing YouTube videos for years. They've been doing kind of projections and background imagery, video work with their live shows for years. So they have a lot of content, both audio and video. And now with this new venture, with the worship media venture, we have a production schedule in which we try to put out the equivalent of 1 hymn package per week. So we try to put out 1 hymn package every week, 1 video with accompanying content. And we meet every morning. We talk about what we're working on at the time, and then my job is to kind of stay about a month ahead of what the other guys are working on, so that I can feed visuals for them to kind of supplement and work with in their schedule. So as it came to this hymn, We All Believe in One True God, as we started talking about this hymn, I looked at their existing YouTube video that they released about a year ago, and they do this really fascinating thing where they evoke different eras with the fonts that they use, and with kind of film effects and lighting effects. So I thought that was a really fascinating concept. So we're taking that concept and we're kind of like growing it. We're amplifying it by putting it into different kind of art forms, taking the same idea but applying it to art mediums. I'm used to working in my studio alone. I'm used to being able to make decisions and sort of change my mind on the fly. And, collaborating with other people, working with other people requires a different level of communication and trust. And it's kind of a new world for me. It's really interesting to kind of open up and work with others. Okay, so working with other people means that I have to release some of my control. I have to release some of my ownership, so that the larger project can benefit. So, for example, in the stained glass window, you know, I did a preliminary design. It's a little bit rough, and I passed that on to the stained glass expert, and he was able to take my rough drawing, expand it 2 times actual size, and make a nice, clean drawing that he can work from. Well, along the way, you know, I had some ideas about the kind of glass we would use. It turns out that we just picked through some of his leftover glass, and we were able to buy almost no glass. We were able to just use leftover glass, and that's an example of just kind of allowing a project to unfold without having to control every aspect of it. The same thing comes when the guys in post-production start putting in different kinds of effects and rearranging some things. You know, I just have to realize it isn't mine. I'm a piece of this project, and the project gets richer as more minds and more hands work on it. So as we move through different stages of world history, we're also moving through different mediums that represent those different stages of world history. So as we begin the song, we're talking about, singing about God the Father, and we see a cylinder seal, a clay image being rolled out by a cylinder. And it kind of looks like cuneiform or cave paintings, kind of a primitive looking, feeling set of imagery. And that image is of the days of creation. And so we get this representation of God the Father in this very earthy, ancient art form. So as we transition out of verse 1 and into verse 2, we move forward to a different era. We move into the Middle Ages, and we're using stained glass to kind of evoke this period of church art. And so I designed a stained glass layout that can evoke certain aspects from the life of Jesus. And we're having stained glass actually being built by my father-in-law, Ted Roach. He's an accomplished stained glass artist. I've done a little bit of stained glass, but I'm nowhere near as adept at it as he is. And so he's graciously willing to work with us on this. So he's building the glass that I designed, and then I will paint images into the panes, which will be used in the video. So as we transition out of verse 2 and into verse 3, we're moving from the person of Jesus to the person of the Holy Spirit, and we're also moving into the contemporary era, into modern times. And so if you think about what we've done, we've looked at transmitting information through hieroglyphics or sort of petroglyph cave painting images, and then we've looked at transmitting information through stained glass images, and both of those examples are sort of about a gathering. People gather to see these images, and our contemporary gathering seems to be online. It seems to be an electronic gathering. Social media and different news outlets, we share ideas, we exchange ideas electronically. So our representation of the Holy Spirit and the way that we transmit the gospel is represented in this sort of mosaic of electronic parts that are soldered together on a circuit board. into kind of a loose representation of a dove, a symbol of the Holy Spirit. So once again on verse 3, I'm no circuitry expert. I have some soldering experience as a boy. I dabbled a little bit with electronics, but it's definitely not my field. So the idea sort of emerged through discussions with other members of Koine, and I started thinking about how to solve this problem, how to create an image out of a circuit board. And I thought of my friend Aaron Spike. He is adept with electronics, and he lent me his collection of electronic parts. And so I dug through bins and bins of different capacitors and resistors and transformers, and actually what I did is I sorted them by color, and I'm sure that that's never how they're ever sorted in any other realm. But for me, I'm just thinking about how they look. So I made myself a palette of electronic parts, kind of little bins by color, and then little by little I would kind of pick through them and try them out in different places and solder it together. It took about a week of just tinkering around with it. And so I do that work, and then, once the video, the filming is done, we pass that on to Koine, and the guys over at Koine will insert some kind of effects into the circuit board to kind of make it look like it's active. One of the guys actually said we should put some power into this thing and see if I've accidentally made something, see what it does. I'm pretty sure I haven't made anything. I'm sure it might just like blow up or something, but that's the intention. So there's an interesting collaboration going on where I'm working with other people, both to kind of shore up skills that I'm not strong in, and then I also pass my product on to another set of people, and they'll do more work to kind of amplify what I've done. And so there's kind of a chain of collaboration happening. All of these people, all of these different elements are going into this one video. So the cylinder seal is an ancient Babylonian form. We're kind of used to thinking about people maybe stamping their ring in wax as kind of a signature that this communication is definitely from this person. In ancient Babylon, they would use a cylinder smaller than this, something that would hang around their neck, and they would roll it through clay. And that would be the assurance that this communication is genuine. And so this kind of obscure ancient art form is something that has fascinated me for years. And as I thought about this project, I had different ideas about how to start this verse 1, the God the Father creation account. And at first I thought it was going to be kind of ink on papyrus sort of look. But, sometimes I get to daydreaming and my brain goes places, and one thing leads to another, and pretty soon I'm trying to think, what's a good source for cylinders? So I thought of batteries, I thought of pop cans, I thought about pouring plaster into a Pringles can, thought about cardboard tubes. And then I realized I have a nice hard maple rolling pin that my mother-in-law gave me about a decade ago. Back then I wanted it so I could make a carving mallet. I cut a piece out, and I've been saving it since then. And now I have And now I have this rolling pin left over. So I cut a piece out for this and used wood carving tools to carve out kind of primitive looking imagery. I'm intentionally trying to evoke cave paintings or cuneiform or cylinder seals, just like this art form. This is a reverse image, and so it's like printmaking. Whatever I carve into the cylinder will come out not only flipped, but also sort of inverted in elevation. So whatever I carve into the wood will be raised in the clay. So you know, just like you're rolling out some dough or something, I take this rolling pin and roll it through some clay that's not too wet, not too dry. If it's too wet, it sticks and doesn't leave a good impression. Too dry and it won't go in deep enough. So I roll it through and it kind of magically creates an image, which incidentally repeats. Because it's a cylinder, I can go on and on and on and on, and the image continues to repeat itself. Now, the fact that this is a cylinder and the form repeats as we continue to roll it through clay is kind of a bonus. I would say that I didn't intend any symbolism at the outset, but as I think about it, as I roll this through clay and the same images continue to appear over and over, it kind of makes me think of the way that night and day happen all the time, and the seasons continue to roll, and generations are born and die in all species. And so, you know, the fact that it repeats can be about the passage of time, kind of the rhythms of the world that were set in motion at creation and continue incessantly. These rhythms continue, and that was a nice kind of byproduct. I did not intend for that, but I enjoy that it's in there. Okay, so once we kind of have a direction, I start to sort of see the final product, or like a foggy view of the final product. And I've got a fairly cohesive idea about what all the parts are going to be like. But as I go out and try to talk to collaborators, it's really hard for me to transfer that vision, because it's very visual. It's hard to describe something, and it sounds crazy in words, but when we put it all together, I'm pretty confident that this works. So, you know, when I'm going to a friend and asking, can I borrow a bunch of electronic parts? Can I dig through all your electronic parts? He might ask, well, what for? He didn't. He was, you know, he understands. But I just, it's an awkward place to try to explain something that doesn't exist. You know, like you have a vision, and sometimes that's the hardest part, is trying to communicate, because that's what all of this is. You know, we make this kind of stuff as a communication tool. Now we're trying to communicate about a communication tool. It's like talking about grammar. It gets obscure, it gets theoretical. So trying to convince people of the vision has been part of the project. The great thing about working with other people is that there's an exchange of ideas. And so when we're talking about this project, or even when we're just kind of working together in general, things sort of seep in. Our conversations sort of ring through my head as I think and as I compose. And so, for example, in the in the second verse, the stained glass window that refers to the life of Jesus, Ben Lorenz told me that his pastor insists that the ascension is one of the key components of the life of Christ. Most people kind of emphasize the birth, death, and resurrection, but if the ascension hadn't taken place, all of it, is sort of canceled. So this final sort of sealing of Christ's deity works its way into my stained glass window. So that conversation, informed me in the way that I composed. As I think about all three of these projects, all three different aspects of this hymn, I can think about strong kind of turns that happen in each case. For example, in the cylinder seal, I originally thought that was going to be kind of ink on papyrus, or I even considered trying to find a place to go do cave paintings or petroglyphs, like carve into a hillside someplace. But sometimes the materials make suggestions. So the objects themselves, like when I handle it, when I start working with it, something feels right or doesn't. Like it's not quite doing it yet, or I can't quite see how it all unfolds. And as a creative, I believe that that's okay, because I think there's 1,000 right answers to a creative project. You can successfully go down a lot of roads and come out with a really great product. You don't have to be tied to your first idea. Another example is when I start handling, these electronic parts. I had kind of an idea, a vision of how it might turn out, but the reality is that there's only so many parts of certain colors, and there's certain sizes and shapes. And so, the reality kind of has to influence the theory. I have an idea, but I have to deal with what is actually in front of me. And so I kind of adapt along the way. I think this project is so much stronger because of all of the other people who are working together on it. I think that's an idea that is scalable. It can go as large as you want it to be. That's kind of the idea of democracy, right? The idea that together we are stronger. And so, when it comes to collaboration, my recommendation is don't cling so tightly to your ideas that you're not listening to others. It's really important to give everybody a chance, to have their ideas and have their role. And there's a strong chance that will result in a much stronger, well-rounded project. Being creatives, being artists, means that sometimes we like to pose questions. They say a designer solves problems, an artist makes problems. And I don't think that's a frightening thing. I think part of what I'm most proud of that we're doing is creating content that kind of lights up your brain, stimulates thought, stimulates faith, maybe makes you think about things that you thought were familiar, makes you think about things that maybe you had tucked away in a category of, well, I already know that. You think you know things. What I like to do with art is question that assumption and bring something up that seems familiar. I want you to look again with fresh eyes. Think again.